Sarah Anderson sat quietly by the expansive window in her Manhattan penthouse, a glass of red wine in her hand, catching the vibrant lights of the city that never sleeps. The neon signs flashing below formed a continuous stream, yet all she could see was her own faint reflection in the glass. At 42, Sarah had reached the pinnacle of a career many could only dream of. As a top financial lawyer, she was not only respected but also regarded as a symbol of success and resilience. But behind the glitzy facade lay an emptiness she couldn't quite name. Endless hours of grueling meetings, gala dinners with forced smiles, and emotionless networking relationships. It was the price she had paid to escape the impoverished small town in Maine she had once called home. She had sworn never to return, as if leaving was the only way to prove her worth. Sarah sipped her wine, letting the bitter liquid slide down her throat. She told herself she was content with this life. Then, the stillness of the room was shattered by the ring of her phone. She frowned at the screen. An unfamiliar number. More troubling still, it bore the area code of her hometown. A ripple of unease coursed through her. She hesitated, wondering if she should answer. How many years had it been? 10, 20. She'd cut ties with almost everyone back there, save for an occasional stilted phone call with Aunt Martha, her mother's longtime friend. Then, compelled by an inexplicable urge, she answered. Sarah. Aunt Martha. The elderly voice on the other end was familiar, but carried a note of urgency. Your mother. She doesn't have much time left. You need to come home. Sarah froze, her grip tightening around the phone until her knuckles turned white. The words felt like a sharp blade cutting through the composure she always prided herself on. Her mother, Ellen, had always been the embodiment of strength and tenacity in Sarah's memory. A woman who had raised her alone after her father left, meeting every hardship with defiance. But Sarah couldn't forget their last conversation, when she had resolutely left to chase her career, leaving behind her mother's disappointment and reproach. Are you sure? Sarah asked, her voice hoarse, her hand trembling, as if the phone might slip from her grasp. Certain, Martha replied, her tone urgent. I didn't want to worry you, but this is what she wants. Before she goes, she said you needed to know something about the family inheritance. Inheritance? Sarah frowned, skepticism creeping into her voice. The Andersons had nothing that could be remotely considered an inheritance. Her childhood memories were filled with the constant struggle to make rent and her mother's late nights under the dim light, calculating every penny. Yes, an inheritance, Martha insisted. I can't explain more, but you need to come home, Sarah, before it's too late. The urgency in Martha's voice felt like an invisible force, pulling Sarah away from her glittering but hollow apartment, drawing her back to the memories she had tried so hard to forget. The mention of an inheritance seemed far-fetched, but deep down, Sarah knew she couldn't ignore this call. For the first time in years, she found herself confronting her greatest fear, her own past. All right, Sarah whispered after a long pause. I'll come. When she hung up, she remained seated, the dazzling city lights outside blurring as a flood of memories surged within her. For the first time, Sarah felt a void that even her success could not fill. Sarah stood before the old house, a strange sense of unfamiliarity creeping over her. Every corner, every detail, bore traces of her past, yet time had left its mark, cloaking everything in a layer of obscurity. The faded walls, the cracked porch, and the overgrown garden made the place look like a forgotten relic of a bygone era. Aunt Martha emerged from the doorway, her small, frail figure exuding determination. "She's very weak, Sarah," Martha said, weariness evident in her voice. "I don't think she has much time left. Go on. She's waiting for you." Entering the house, Sarah felt the weight of nostalgia pressing down on her shoulders. Everything was almost as she remembered. The old armchair where her mother used to knit, the scarred oak dining table that had borne witness to their humble meals. The air was thick with the scent of thyme and aged wood. Ellen lay on a small bed in the corner of her room. Her frail body looked as delicate as an autumn leaf. Her eyes opened slowly as Sarah approached, and a faint smile flickered across her gaunt face. "You came," she said, her voice soft but clear, as if she had mustered all her strength to speak. Sarah stepped closer, her emotions threatening to choke her. "Mom." Ellen's bony hand trembled as it reached out to grasp Sarah's. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. "There's a box in this house. It's been here for a long time. It holds secrets about our family, about you, about your father. About your father. You must open it, but only after I'm gone." Sarah's head spun. "What are you talking about? What secrets?" "Mom, I don't understand." "I can't explain now," Ellen said, her voice breaking. "But promise me, Sarah. Find the box, and you'll understand everything." Her mother's hand tightened around hers, her gaze imploring, as if conveying something far greater than words could express. "Mom." Sarah wanted to ask more, but Ellen's eyes closed, her breaths growing fainter. Sarah stood there, feeling as if the ground beneath her was giving way. 2 days later, Ellen passed away peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was a modest affair, attended by a handful of neighbors and Aunt Martha. Sarah felt trapped between the grief of loss and the confusion surrounding her mother's last words. After the service, while tidying the house, Sarah resolved to find the box. She searched every corner, from closets to the basement. Finally, in the back of an old wooden wardrobe in her mother's room, she discovered a small wooden box, carefully locked. The box was adorned with simple yet intricate carvings, with a crescent moon at its center. Picking it up, Sarah felt a rush of anticipation. When she opened it, she found a bundle of old letters, a few photographs, and a small handwritten note. Slowly, she read the words, "True inheritance is not wealth, but the story. You must find the place your father left behind. Start with the house by the sea." Sarah frowned. A house by the sea? She couldn't recall her family owning such a property. Leafing through the letters, she noticed they were written by someone named Robert Grayson, a name unfamiliar to her, but recurring throughout the correspondence. One letter stood out. "Ellen, I know you want to shield Sarah from everything, but we can't hide forever. The house by the sea is all that remains. Don't let her grow up not knowing how hard her father fought to protect this. It's our legacy." Sarah's heart raced. Who was Robert Grayson? Hadn't her father left long ago? Why had her mother kept this a secret? And what was this legacy he had fought to preserve? Sarah resolved to uncover the truth. She headed to the town hall to sift through public records. After hours of searching, she discovered a seaside house listed under the ownership of Robert Grayson, with her father's name as a co-owner. A mixture of curiosity and trepidation filled her as she drove to the house. It was a small wooden cottage, standing solitary amidst a desolate beach. The cold sea breeze and the rhythmic crash of the waves seemed to echo her turmoil. Stepping inside, Sarah found remnants of a life long past. A faded photograph on the mantelpiece caught her eye. In it, her father stood beside another man, Robert Grayson himself. On a table, she spotted an old letter, forgotten by time. It was from her father, addressed to her mother. Ellen, if you're reading this, I hope you'll forgive all my mistakes. This house is more than just property. It's our dream, a place to rebuild, to help those in need. If Sarah is strong enough, I trust she'll continue this dream. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. The questions that had haunted her began to find answers, but an even greater mystery awaited her, one that could change everything she thought she knew about her parents and herself. Sarah sat down on a wooden chair in the seaside house, her trembling hands clutching the letter. Her father's words seemed to echo in the silent room, pulling her into a part of her past she had never known. She turned to the other letters. One, dated over 20 years ago, made her pause. Robert, I know you're worried, but I've made up my mind. This house will be the place where we realize our shared dream, a center for helping those in need, people like we once were. If anything happens to me, tell Ellen the truth. Sarah must know about this legacy, and I trust that one day she'll understand and carry on our journey. Sarah read the words over and over. A shared dream. What was it? And why had her mother hidden all of this? A strong sense of urgency gripped her. She had to uncover the truth. The next day, Sarah sought out James Wyatt, the lawyer her mother had once trusted. When Sarah explained about the seaside house and the letters, Wyatt hesitated before pulling out a file. Your father and Robert Grayson purchased this property with the intention of building a community center, he explained. They wanted it to be a haven for struggling families. But after your father's sudden death, your mother abandoned the plan. She feared continuing would plunge the family into financial ruin. A dull ache spread through Sarah's chest. Her father had sacrificed everything for this dream, only for her mother to abandon it. What should she do? Pursue her father's vision or return to New York, where safety and stability awaited? When Sarah returned to the seaside house, she saw an unfamiliar car parked outside. A tall, older man with sharp eyes stepped out. You must be Sarah Anderson, he said, his voice confident. I'm Michael Grayson, Robert Grayson's son. Sarah was startled. You knew my father? I didn't just know him. My father and yours were close friends, but things were more complicated than you realize. Michael paused, scrutinizing her. My father left behind important documents about this house. I think you need to see them. Michael handed Sarah an old file. As she skimmed through it, she discovered the house was not merely a site for the community center. It had also been a refuge for undocumented immigrants fleeing brutal persecution. To protect them, her father had forged papers and transferred the property to Robert Grayson's name to avoid detection. Sarah was stunned. Her father wasn't just a loving parent. He was a quiet hero, risking everything to help others. Why did my mother hide this? Sarah asked, feeling a mix of admiration and betrayal. Michael shrugged. Maybe she thought you didn't need to know. Or perhaps she feared you'd be burdened by a legacy too heavy to bear. Sarah spent the night rereading the letters and reflecting on everything she had uncovered. She thought about her life in New York. Luxurious, secure, but hollow. Here, her father had poured his life into something far greater than wealth. The next morning, Sarah called a town meeting. In the small room of the local community center, she stood before a crowd of curious faces. I know many of you remember my father, John Anderson, she began. her voice trembling, but firm. "In the past few days, I've learned that my father left us a legacy. Not just a house, but a dream. He wanted this place to be a sanctuary for those in need." The room fell silent, some attendees again nodding in agreement. Sarah took a deep breath. "I won't sell the house. Instead, I'm going to fulfill my father's dream by building a new community center for this town. But I can't do it alone. I need your help." A round of applause broke out. Aunt Martha stepped forward, her eyes glistening. "You've done the right thing, Sarah. You've found yourself. And your family, too." That evening, when Sarah returned to the community center, night had already fallen. A chilly sea breeze made her shiver as she tightened her coat. Before her, the house seemed to be shrouded in an eerie stillness. The lights inside flickered unnaturally, different from when she had left. The front door was slightly ajar, leaving a sliver of light visible. Her heart pounded. Someone had been here. Sarah approached cautiously, each step heavier than the last, her mind swirling with doubts. Pushing the door open, she stepped into the dark hallway. The silence inside was unsettling, broken only by the faint howling of the wind outside and the creak of the wooden floor beneath her feet. She took a deep breath, willing herself to stay calm. Near the meeting room, she heard hushed voices, tense and clipped. Sarah froze, holding her breath, and pressed her ear to the door. "We need to speed this up." Michael Grayson's low, gravelly voice came through. "If she finds out about the investment fund, everything will fall apart. No one in this town will back us." Sarah's body went rigid. Investment fund. Fall apart. She tried to steady her racing heart, but Michael's next words struck her like a thunderbolt. "I don't care about this center," he continued, his tone darker, more resolute. "We just need the land contract finalized. After that, she can do whatever she wants." Her throat tightened, her entire body trembled, part fury, part fear. She stepped back, her mind screaming questions. What was he planning? What fund? And what did he truly want from the center? The door suddenly opened, and Michael stepped out. His sharp eyes immediately locked onto Sarah's face. "Sarah," he said, his tone calm, but his gaze sharp and probing. "What brings you here at this hour?" Sarah forced herself to stay composed. I just came back to check on a few things. Is there a problem?" Michael stepped closer, a faint smile curling his lips, though it did little to ease her discomfort. "Not at all," he replied smoothly. "I was just meeting a potential partner. You know, developing the center takes a lot of resources. I thought you'd be pleased to know we're doing everything to support your project." "Really?" Sarah said, keeping her tone neutral, though her hand clenched tightly under her coat. "I won't interrupt. I'll just finish up and leave." Michael smiled again, his eyes never leaving hers. "Of course. Don't hesitate to ask if you need anything. Sarah, I'm here to help you realize your father's dream." His words hung in the air like a taunt, making her feel as if she were under surveillance. As Michael walked down the hallway and disappeared into the night, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. But as she gazed at the empty meeting room and the flickering lights above, she knew she couldn't ignore this. Something was happening, something dangerous, and Michael Grayson was definitely hiding a secret that could destroy everything. Taking a deep breath, Sarah's eyes hardened with resolve. "We'll uncover the truth soon, Michael," she whispered. "Very soon." With determination blazing within her, she left the center, preparing for a battle she knew she couldn't afford to lose. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a heavy heart. Michael's words from the previous night echoed in her mind like a warning she couldn't ignore. After hurriedly preparing herself, she decided to visit James Wyatt's law office, the lawyer who had supported her mother with legal matters for years. Wyatt's office was a small, cozy space on the town's main street. When Sarah entered, he was engrossed in a stack of documents. He looked up, surprised to see her. "Sarah, what a surprise this early in the day. Is something wrong?" he asked, adjusting his glasses. "Mr. Wyatt," Sarah began, her voice firm but tinged with tension. "I need to review the documents related to the investment fund for the community center. Can you provide them for me?" Wyatt looked puzzled. "Michael Grayson has handled most of the transactions. I wasn't directly involved in recent agreements, only provided basic legal support. Are you all right? Is there a problem?" "I'm not sure yet," Sarah replied, her eyes reflecting suspicion. "But I need to verify everything. This center is my family's legacy, and I want to ensure that everything is above board." Wyatt studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Of course. All the records are stored here. You're welcome to examine them." Sarah sat by the desk, sifting through stacks of thick documents. Page by page, she scrutinized every detail, every signature. At first, everything seemed normal, but then she noticed something unusual. One file was marked with a name she had never encountered: Greenco Investments. Flipping through the pages, her sharp eyes caught a line: funding agreement between Greenco Investments and Michael Grayson. The next line sent chills down her spine: transfer of ownership rights for the seaside property in exchange for a $10 million investment. Sarah's chest tightened. She read on, and the truth became alarmingly clear. Michael had used the community center's name to secure a deal with Greenco Investments, a company notorious for shady real estate deals. Their plan was to convert the entire property into a luxury resort, completely erasing the center and its original purpose. Sarah dropped the file, her hands trembling. Anger surged within her, but so did a profound sense of betrayal. How could Michael exploit her trust and that of the entire community so callously? Wyatt, noticing her pale face, asked, "Sarah, are you all right? Did you find something?" "This is a scheme," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "Michael is trying to sell this land to Greenco Investments. If this goes through, the community center will be destroyed. He's using my father's legacy for personal gain." Wyatt sat frozen, his eyes wide with shock. "I had no idea. Michael always portrayed himself as wanting to help the community. This is truly appalling." Sarah clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. She couldn't let this happen. This wasn't just about a building. It was about her father's dream and her family's heritage. Without hesitation, she pulled out her phone and called Michael. "Michael," she said coldly, "we need to talk immediately." He sounded surprised and slightly defensive. "What's this about, Sarah? I'm very busy." "No," she replied firmly. "You'll meet me at the center right now. I have questions that need answers." Hanging up, Sarah lifted her head, her eyes blazing with newfound determination. She knew she was about to confront a cunning adversary, but she also knew she couldn't back down. With the file in hand, Sarah left Wyatt's office, bracing herself for a confrontation that would change everything. In the meeting room of the community center, Michael sat across from Sarah, his demeanor composed. "You called me here for what, Sarah? I thought we were working toward the same goal. Sarah threw the documents onto the table. Is this your idea of a shared goal? Turning this center into a money-making tool for investors? Michael's brow furrowed momentarily, but he quickly regained his composure. You don't understand. Without investment, this center will never thrive. This is the only way to bring your father's dream to life. No, Sarah shot back, her voice icy. This is not what my father wanted. He gave his life to protect this place, not to see it sold off for profit. Michael stood, his eyes flashing with a barely concealed anger. You think you know better? Your father left behind a failing center, not some grand legacy. I'm just trying to save it in the most practical way. Sarah rose to her feet, her hands clenched. No, you don't understand my father at all. Do you not see how your so-called practical approach destroys the dreams of countless families? If I let you continue, my father's legacy will be reduced to nothing more than a hollow name on this land. Michael smirked. You're delusional, Sarah. Dreams don't hold any value in the real world. Sarah stared into his eyes, her voice steady but filled with conviction. I know enough to understand that if I let you proceed, my family's legacy will be erased forever. Sarah called an emergency meeting with the community center board and local residents. Standing before them, she presented the evidence she had uncovered. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the room. Michael attempted to defend himself. Everyone, think realistically. Without investment, this center won't survive in the long term. Sarah stood firm, her gaze unwavering. It's not money, but people who make this center what it is. We don't need to rely on investors who care only about profit. I believe we can preserve my father's dream together. A wave of support swept through the room. Michael's face hardened as he realized he had lost. With a grim expression, he left the meeting. In the weeks that followed, Sarah launched a fundraising campaign with a determination she had never known before. She reached out to the community, charitable organizations, and even local media to share her father's story and the center's purpose. Donations began to pour in. Small checks from grateful families, heartfelt letters of support, and eventually significant contributions from larger organizations. A year later, Sarah stood before the newly rebuilt community center. It was no longer just a building, but a beacon of hope and unity. The warm yellow walls, large windows, and colorful playground outside symbolized a fresh start for the town. Standing on the steps, Sarah watched children playing, their laughter echoing through the air. Families gathered in the courtyard, talking and smiling as if the center were the town's beating heart. Aunt Martha approached her, eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Sarah," she said, her voice trembling. "Your parents would be so proud." Sarah smiled, her eyes misty. "It wasn't just me," she said. "We all did this. Without everyone's help, this dream would never have come true." As the sun set over the horizon, Sarah stood still, watching the center glow warmly under the evening lights. It was more than a building. It was proof of resilience, love, and the strength of community. She whispered softly, as if speaking to her father, "I did it, Dad, and I'll keep going, so your dream never fades." The sunset bathed the ocean in hues of crimson and gold, the waves sparkling as though adorned with a dusting of starlight. Sarah sat on a large rock, her bare feet touching the cool sand. In her hands was her father's final letter, a piece of paper faded by time. Yet the words upon it glowed in her memory as vividly as the first time she read them. The sea breeze whispered through her hair, brushing lightly against her shoulders. She closed her eyes, hearing the waves as if they carried the voices of her father, her mother, and the dreams they had left behind, reverberating across time. She silently read the letter, each word etching deeper into her heart. Sarah, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer here to witness this dream come to life. But I believe in you, my daughter. True legacy does not lie in material possessions, but in the love, sacrifice, and kindness we leave behind in this world. Continue the journey, Sarah. I trust you to. See it through. Tears rolled down her cheeks as Sarah clutched the letter tightly. Her gaze turned toward the vast, endless ocean, her teary eyes now alight with a strange, steadfast resolve. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom, she whispered, her voice melding with the breeze. I've found my path. I've finally understood the meaning of the life you tried so hard to teach me. She rose. Barefoot, walking along the soft sand, her eyes fixed on the setting sun melting into the horizon. Gone were the fears and doubts that had once haunted her. In their place surged a newfound strength, like the ceaseless waves crashing ashore. On her way back to the center, Sarah paused by the window of a small house. Through its warm glow, she saw a family gathered around the dinner table, laughter spilling out into the quiet evening. The scene reminded her of her own childhood, of her mother's relentless efforts to bring joy to their lives, despite the hardships. When she arrived at the center, its lights were shining brightly. Sarah stopped at the entrance, quietly observing the vibrant life within. Children were playing in the yard, their laughter as pure and musical as a wind chime. Parents chatted animatedly, their faces glowing with relief and hope. An elderly woman emerged from the center, carrying a bag of food and a drawing her grandchild had made. Seeing Sarah, she stopped and took her hand. Thank you, the woman said, her voice filled with heartfelt emotion. This center has changed our lives. You've truly brought hope back to this town. Sarah stood on the center steps, her gaze drifting to the horizon where the sun had just set. Every laugh, every grateful glance, and every word of thanks from the community felt like a gentle melody, resonating within her soul. She whispered softly, as if speaking to her parents. I've done it, Mom and Dad. I've kept your dream alive, and I promise I'll make it grow even stronger. Not for myself, but for everyone who believes in it. From afar, the sound of the ocean waves echoed, as if harmonizing with her vow, a promise that would never be forgotten. Outside, the laughter of children mingled with the ocean breeze, creating a timeless hymn of love and hope. Sarah knew that from this moment on, everything she did carried the weight and meaning of a living legacy, a legacy that would never fade. Sarah's journey was not just the story of a woman discovering the purpose of her life. It was a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the inheritance of love. If this story has touched your heart, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe to our channel to help us reach our first major milestone, 1,000 subscribers. Your support inspires us to continue sharing meaningful and profound stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.